Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing tonight? Just dropping
To
some
realize in all your life,
dropping some
all
comments.
you love, all you hate, all your memory, all your pain, it was all the same thing. It was all the same dream, the dream that you had inside a locker room. A dream about being a person. And like a lot of dreams, I had a monster at the end of it.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Leon Block. I got the usual block drop for you tonight. The very first thing I want to get into is what I think is really crazy because, I mean, we've been hearing about this for years and years and years, but because it is the church, apparently we give them grace. I don't understand why, but we do. And with the current stuff going on in France, I don't know what y'all know, but reports just came out at the end of a 4-year investigation into abuse in the church in France. According to this report, an estimated 216,000, not 216, 216,000 children were abused by priests since 1950. More than 100,000 others were abused by lay employees of church institutions. And what they have to offer is prayers with great sorrow for their wounds and gratitude for their courage in reporting their abuse. That's what they have to say. I don't get how people can still support this, knowing the horrible things that they do, now knowing that they've abused hundreds of thousands of children, and that's in France alone. Can you imagine the atrocities that they've been doing for centuries all across Europe specifically, but even here in the US and in Canada? Can you imagine all the things that have not been spoken about? This is literally just the tip of the iceberg, y'all. This is crazy. I put the link in the comments to this article because I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's crazy. Reporters of the inquiry found evidence of between 2,900 and 3,200 abusive priests out of a total of about 115,000 who had served in France since 1950. That is insane. So locally, I live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and locally here we have a Kellogg's factory, right? Well, I don't know what y'all know, but the Kellogg's factory is four Kellogg's factories are on strike currently. Back in 1,400 workers across all of the Kellogg cereal plants went on strike Tuesday as union negotiations have stalled for more than a year. The strike includes plants in Omaha, Nebraska, Battle Creek, Michigan, here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and in Memphis, Tennessee. A union representative says Kellogg's is threatening to outsource the jobs to Mexico if workers don't accept the company's proposals, which include a loss of premium health care, holiday and vacation pay, and reduced retirement benefits. Workers are also demanding better wages. I can't believe that this is what, the third or fourth major company to, snack company to go on strike, as they should be. But why is this not getting even more attention? And why are companies just able to just smash people and their rights, and people would just go along with it? What if this was your job? In New York, the head of the Sergeants Benevolent Association police union resigned on Tuesday, hours after the FBI raided its Manhattan headquarters. The home of the now former union president, Ed Mullins, was also searched, though it's unclear what the target of the federal investigation is. And check this, because I meant to talk about this the other day. Descendants of Henrietta Lacks sue pharmaceutical company for using her cells without consent. The family of her, Henrietta Lacks, the black patient whose cells were taken by Johns Hopkins University Hospital without her consent in 1951, is suing the pharmaceutical company Thermo Fisher Scientific and demanding reparations and the intellectual property of those cells. The lawsuit denounces a racist medical system and accuses the drug company of using what is known as the HeLa cell line without their consent while making billions of dollars in profit. 7 decades ago, it was discovered that Henrietta Lacks cells could live forever, helping scientists produce remedies for several diseases, including the first polio vaccine. French trade unions protest against low pay, pension, and unemployment reforms. In France, union leaders led a nationwide strike Tuesday to protest low wages and plan reforms to pensions and unemployment benefits. Workers are hoping to put pressure on the government of Emmanuel Macron ahead of next year's presidential election. This is a pensioner demonstrating yesterday in Paris. Everyone's purchasing power has gone down. That of pensioners, of workers, of those who are unemployed, of the disabled. It's disgusting. Billions of euros are. Hey, what's going on, fam? Thank you for joining us. Billions of euros around the world. That could be enough to pay salaries in the hospitals, in the schools, a decent public service. I'm here because of all of that. I'm here for the future of humanity too, because we can talk about the climate in a general way, but if we don't change the system, it's as useless as a fart underwater. I know that's right. Speak that shit. UN rejects expulsion of top officials from Ethiopia as millions in urgent need of humanitarian assistance. The UN Security Council is meeting today to discuss the crisis in Ethiopia and the recent expulsion of several senior UN officials from Ethiopia amid the mounting humanitarian crisis in war toward Tigray. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said last week he rejected the expulsion. This is Jens Larke from the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. It is critically important that the humanitarian operation continues. We have a very high number of people in very urgent need in Tigray. In fact, 5.2 million people over there are in urgent need of assistance. Jeremy, yes. It's useless, right? Missouri executes a man with intellectual disability despite high profile pleas. The state of Missouri executed Ernest Lee Johnson yesterday after a U.S. Supreme Court rejected a petition to delay the killing. And despite pleas from lawmakers, activists, and even the Vatican to spare Johnson, a black man who had been an intellect, a black man who had an intellectual disability, excuse me, it was Missouri's first execution in over a year and the seventh in the U.S. this year. That's what it seems like. That is exactly what it seems like, right? No, what it really, I think it is they just don't care about executing black men. They'll just do it despite what people want. They don't care when it comes to black men specifically. I know you do. Come on with it. This story is very interesting because watching this on Democracy Now, which is, again, as I always say, where I get a lot of my information from, constituents of Arizona Senator are stepping up pressure on the corporate Democrat as she continues to threaten passage of the sweeping reconciliation package that would expand the nation's social safety net and combat the climate crisis. On Monday, Karina Reese, head of the Arizona Dream Act Coalition and a former volunteer on the Sinema campaign, approached the senator on her flight to DC to ask her to support immigration reform as part of the legislation. And she asked her a bunch of questions, and the senator literally ignored her. Literally just blatantly ignored her. I thought it was so rude. You know what? I I half agree with you. I think representation is key, but I think before representation, we need to change the culture and perception of blacks and brown people in America, because then and only then would black and brown people be more inclined to want to be a police officer, feel safe being a police officer, and know that other people feel safe around them. Until that changes, no one's going to want to be a cop or be in the government. It's too there's too much fuckery. No one's going to want to do it. I'm not against it necessarily, but I just don't think anyone's going to want to do it. And so I have some clips for y'all concerning the whistleblower that had things to say. Oh my goodness, she went in.
At the hearing, Haugen didn't recommend breaking up Facebook, but called for increased federal oversight.
If you split Facebook and Instagram apart, it's likely that most advertising dollars will go to Instagram, and Facebook will continue to be this Frankenstein that is altering, that is endangering lives around the world, only now there won't be money to fund it.
In the past, today, that Frances Haugen did not work on child safety or Instagram or research these issues and has no direct knowledge of the topic from her work at Facebook. But last week, amid criticism in response to some of these revelations, Facebook paused a plan for a new Instagram Kids feature for those under the age of 13. Haugen resigned from Facebook in April, fed up, she said, with the company's inaction. Today, she laid ultimate responsibility on Facebook founder and CEO Mark Zuckerberg.
In the end, the buck stops with Mark. There is no one currently holding Mark accountable but himself. We are responsible for the organizations that we build. Mark has built an organization that is very metrics driven. It is intended to be flat. There is no unilateral responsibility. The metrics make the decision. Unfortunately, that itself is a decision. And in the end, if he is the CEO and the chairman of Facebook, he is responsible for those decisions.
I can't agree with you more, Jeremy. She is so right.
It follows them into their bedrooms. The last thing they see before they go to bed at night is someone being cruel to them, or the first thing they see in the morning is someone being cruel to them.
Haugen said Facebook's own internal research proved that its products have negative impacts on kids, including that for 1 in 3 teenage girls, Instagram makes negative body issues worse.
Facebook knows that they are leading young users to anorexia content.
In an exchange with Republican Senator Dan Sullivan of Alaska, she pointed to the scale of the problem for teens.
We're going to look back 20 years from now, and all of us are going to be like, what in the hell were we thinking? When we recognize the damage that it's done to a generation of kids. Do you agree with that, Ms. Haugen?
When Facebook has made statements in the past about how much benefit Instagram is providing to kids' mental health, like kids are connecting who were once alone. What I'm so surprised about that is if Instagram is such a positive force, have we seen a golden age of teenage mental health in the last 10 years? Yeah. No, we've seen
the opposite, right?
We've seen escalating rates of suicide and depression amongst teenagers.
For its part, Facebook...
See, we really have. Facebook has been evil. It has been evil. But what are we going to do about it? What are your other means of supplementary platforms that you would rather use? Would you rather use YouTube, TikTok? Would you rather use Twitter, WhatsApp, Twitch? There's so many out there, but there's not one that connects as many people as Facebook does. And I think that is part of the issue, at least for me, because family, friends, and I connect so much with so many people on Facebook. All of my pages, it's so much easier on Facebook versus other platforms. And I'm not saying like Instagram isn't bad, because Instagram is a great platform to speak on and to connect with people on, but it's in a different fashion, you know? So I'm right now I'm left as to what to do, really. Becoming abolitionists. Derica Purnell on why police reform is not enough to protect Black lives.
As we turn to the evolving discussion about abolishing police in the prison industrial complex amidst the disproportionate rates of police killings and incarceration of Black people. A new study published Thursday in the medical journal The Lancet estimates the federal database known as the National Vital Statistics System failed to count more than half the deaths from police violence over nearly 40 years. Researchers from the University of Washington also found Black people were killed by police at a rate 3.5 times higher than white people. This comes after a series of police killings of African Americans last year prompted a racial reckoning, including George Floyd in Minneapolis, Breonna Taylor in Louisville. Many states have since passed laws aimed at reforming police, but efforts to pass a federal law to overhaul policing failed to pass the Senate, and bipartisan talks over police reform broke down last month. For more, we're joined by Derica Purnell, human rights lawyer, columnist for The Guardian, author of the new book published Tuesday, Becoming Abolitionists, Police Protests and the Pursuit of Freedom. Derica, welcome back to Democracy Now! You are thank you. It's great to have you with us. Congratulations on this book. You're a Black woman, a Black mother of 2 Black sons. You were an advocate for police reform. but you are now what you would call a police or prison abolitionist. Explain your journey.
Of course. So, like lots of people who grew up in the United States, I had just unexamined commitments to using and relying on police in my neighborhoods, in my community, because they were the institution that was the most well resources, right? So I had a ton of ranges of experience with police. And even throughout those horrible encounters, they were often the only option to respond to harm and to respond to violence. And so the book details that sort of early experiences. And then what happened once I became part of social movements, who pushed me to think more critically and more beautifully and more creatively about building a world without violence, right? With how to reduce our reliance on police and to reduce the reasons why people need them. The book also kind of describes a political journey of a generation, which I believe I'm a part of, who went from fighting for George Zimmerman's arrest and imprisonment in the wake of killing and murdering, rather, Trayvon Martin back in 2012, to become a generation who is leading, I would say, the call to abolish the entire carceral state. And so it documents that political journey for generation, as well as my personal political journey of becoming an abolitionist.
So my thoughts on that, I think that it's very important to listen to someone like this because, and Jeremy had talked about this, one of the commenters to the podcast, about how we need more representation of people of color within these systems. And though I disagree, I think that we need education and we need more documentation of Black and brown people's experiences when it comes to these kinds of things. I think that the prison system, the education system, and the lack of diversity and trust in policing authorities is what leads to that lack of diversity. And I think that a lot of people in my generation really are pushing for a total abolition movement of police and prisons. And it doesn't mean that something like it won't be there, but in a different light, something in a more positive light, like rehabilitation and like safety people and mental health people, people that make you feel safe to be around, I think would do greater good than anything else.
As well as African American who say that the abolitionist movement is not realistic, that the majority of people in the Black and brown communities still want policing to protect them?
Well, I would say that I have lots of things to say to those people, especially the Black ones who were dismissive of abolition as an outside agitator call to action, which is completely not true. The tradition of people fighting for police and prison abolition are rooted in Black feminists like Miriam Cobblin, Angela Davis, Ruth Wilson Gilmore, Rachel Herzing. So I would just try to clarify what we mean when we say abolition. The second thing that I would say is that, well, they're very excited to point to those statistics about Black people who would like to continue to use police in their neighborhoods. But we look at Black people who are also demanding, more resources for education, more jobs in the community, universal health care. Those political leaders are usually not interested in using statistical support for Black communities for those progressive causes. And so what happens is that there's a devaluing and a divestment in all the other resources that Black and brown people, working class people demand in their neighborhoods. And then they hold up one specific statistic that they're willing to pay for in order to call it public safety.
She is spot on. She is spot on with that. Because the thing is, all the people that are sitting there advocating for more police in Black and brown neighborhoods are not pointing to the fact that when they do that, they're divesting from all the other resources that a neighborhood and a community needs to survive. So many cities invest so much money in policing and literally directly divest from other crucial services. And that is part of the problem. It just feeds the downward spiral even more. I think it needs to go almost one step above education. Whites who are ignorant need to go through the experience of living in poverty. I completely agree. I couldn't agree with you more. But where will we even start with that when so many whites still continue to want to be ignorant, meaning like the racist ones, or the ones that don't realize that they actually hold racist ideals and values, but claim that they're not racist? Because those are the ones that really are most resistant, not the racist ones. The racist ones really are just like lost and hurt and self-hate, and they don't understand that it has nothing to do with other people and it's more about them. This article you can find on Democracy Now! I will post a link in the comments, and make sure that you get Derica Purnell, his human rights lawyer from New York City, her book titled Becoming Abolitionists, because I definitely want to check that out. Let me post in the comments real quick. What do you mean by volunteer boot camp? Like, describe how that would help. Because who's going to sign up for it? That's my question. There's the article for you for the book Becoming Abolitionist by Derica Purnell. And make sure you listen to the full interview. And there's also a transcript for it to boot. And so that looks like it is the bulk of the block drops for tonight. Another one you could definitely look into is ticking time bombs. California oil spill spurs new calls to ban offshore oil drilling. You definitely want to look at that article too. Looks like a juicy one, especially for my environmentalists out there. I said the same thing with Black Panther. Why would white folks watch it? They will do anything that they think will prove something wrong, so they will. I completely, you know what? I completely agree. They will just do anything they can to prove, hey, I'm not racist. See, I like Black Panther. You know what? I couldn't agree with you more. But that's also an example of the way that American society is, you know, keeping up with the Joneses and faking it till you make it and acting like you're more wealthy than what you are. And we all kind of do it to an extent. But with white people that don't understand that here in American society, we all have prejudices and biases. It's the way that our society works. But white people hold the power in society, so therefore they can be racist. And it should be understood that to be white in America means that you have certain biases and racist or ignorant ideologies or prejudices. So acknowledge that, understand it, and when you do, the perception of American reality changes, and then you understand the things that Jeremy and I are discussing right now. It becomes more understood. And with the Black Panther comment, I think that is the perfect example of that. Do you have any more examples? Because that, like, I mean, just in general, you know, I mean, we heard this time and time again, and it's so annoying. I'm not racist. I have a black friend, or I have black kids, or my boyfriend's black. I don't care if your boyfriend's black. It doesn't mean that you can't be racist or hold racist ideologies or prejudices. Like, are you taking care of your child's hair because your child's biracial, or are you just leaving it a mess and saying that it's too difficult for you? So you just shave her hair and keep it. Like, these are things that I really bring up, because they're things that people don't understand, the things that they're saying and how damaging they can actually be, or not understanding the culture. And with all due respect, if you have all due respect, you will have some understanding, or form, or seek to have some understanding of the culture. And in American society, we lack that understanding as people, but white people, I feel, lack that understanding more so than any other demographic or group. And there was actually studies done when, like, people watch movies. White folk tend to tune out from a movie when there's no other white people on screen, or when there's a dominance of people of color. They tend to tune out a lot quicker than when they would if they're just bored. And this makes sense to me, but it's also why, if you ever notice, in Hollywood movies, especially cartoons or CGI movies specifically, they make people of color that are acting in the movie some kind of animal or blue or green or purple person, instead of making them what they should be portrayed as. That's a good one. I love soul food. I'm not racist. I don't have an issue with black people. Or, I grew up in a hood my whole life. I'm not racist. You can grow up in a hood and be racist, by the way. That's a good one. And I think these are things that even not even just white people specifically, but I mean, where I live here was a big problem with gentrification. And a lot of people, there's like social media groups, specifically Facebook, where there's this neighborhood that I specifically live in, and a lot of the gentrifiers, colonists and gentrifiers, are so quick to call police for non, like, threatening things and complain about it. And then when people like myself have something to say about the harm that it causes and the lives that it ruins, simply calling the cops on people of color, they clap back with very ignorant and prejudiced points of views, even the people of color. And I find it very damaging, and I feel very helpless in doing anything about it, because these group members will just attack you. They will pounce on you. And poor people and people of color are not a part of these groups, nor do they even know that these groups exist. That's also part of the problem. You come into a neighborhood and don't understand poor people's culture. Things are changing so fast around me, and it's scary. It's just weird to turn a block and just see, like, young millennial bougie people with their shades on and their Starbucks coffee, walking their little poodle around a block from me. And it's just like, I'm not used to this, and it's a shock. And they look at you like, they own the neighborhood and they're above you, and like, you're in their way. And like, it bothers me. I don't know. I want to know how other people feel about this. If you live in an area that you're experiencing the same thing, like, does it make you feel some kind of way as well? Because it makes me feel some kind of way, and I don't like feeling that way. But as much as I've tried to fight these effects of gentrification and be very outspoken about it, sometimes I feel very alone in that people are just like, they've given up fighting it, or they just think that it's a battle that can't be won. And in a lot of instances, that can be true because of all of the money that goes into it and the people that support it, whether they realize it or not. But I still can't help but, like, your comfort zone, your home, like, You know, like you don't want to leave that or get rid of that. And when things change so much around you, it kind of leaves you bewildered at the same time. And people that just have the money and the luxury to go where they want can't understand that. That's part of the problem. That's part of what feeds into the lack of understanding and communication between different demographics within an area. It's almost like two different worlds or two different neighborhoods within one. What can we what can we truly do about it? Or are we just going to succumb to things continuing to change and just be okay with it? I'm not okay with it. But gentrification is a hard evil to combat. I know that. I mean, we all know that. With the way that the world's changing and inflation going up, there's a crisis with the Federal Reserve and our spending per today. There's a lot of things to worry about. Yes, there's a lot of things to be grateful for. We are blessed at the same time. But we also need to understand that we need to be prepared for storms. We need to form an understanding of where we want to head as a society, because there's a lot of things changing. And even with what we saw with Facebook the other day, tanking, we need to hold them accountable too, and hold ourselves accountable. What are we doing here? Do we want to look back 20 years from now and say, how do we treat this generation coming up in the Facebook and Instagram era, and the way that they view themselves and how we interact with each other as a society? Because there's going to be lasting effects of this. Please let me know what you think in the comments, whether you're watching from Facebook, YouTube, whatever. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Leon Block channel. Please subscribe, follow our Facebook, the Leon Block Independent Media. It's been a great night chatting with y'all. Thanks for tuning in to the Block Drop on the Leon Block. And stay tuned for more, y'all. Have a good night.